IVM.
It actually started off, yes, by the Ministry of Finance, and the thought itself was to get open banking into India. Now, Europe, this was already happening, but when India thinks about it and when RBI thinks about it, it's always a step ahead. Yeah. So the good part is that India started off not only as an open banking ecosystem, but an open finance ecosystem. So there are four major players in an account aggregator ecosystem. The one in the center is the end consumer, individuals like you and me. As a consumer, you have the power in your hand to see everything together.
Right.
Otherwise, multiple passwords, multiple things that you need to remember, it becomes a pain.
Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. And on today's episode, I'm talking about the account aggregator concept with Wilfred Sigler Managing Director, VAS, India and South Asia Markets, CRIF Solutions. We are talking about what exactly is the account aggregator concept, how it can change things for you. Okay, in the intro, I mentioned that this is kind of the second episode we're doing on the account aggregator because way back, I think in 2019 when I was in Delhi, I had met Ranjan of DigiLocker at that point of time, and we'd spoken about the account aggregator framework at that point of time. It was still not as being spoken about as it is today. But today's guest, of course, will explain to us what exactly this is and much more. Wilfred, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you for having me, Anupam. It's a pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you. So first off, course, we've had CRIF Highmark on our show before. Sanjeet was there. That was an online recording. So I'm thrilled to have someone from CRIF in the studio for this recording. What is CRIF Connect, and in general, what is CRIF?
So CRIF is a company based out of Italy and a multinational company working across the globe, more than 4 continents. We have presence in more than 90 countries. But majorly, if you see what businesses CRIF is into, you can actually divide it into information, analytics, and solutions. So we work with data. We run 26 credit bureaus across the world. With this data, obviously, there's a need to analyze the data. So we also provide analytics services. We build bespoke scores, bespoke models, as well as through the bureau, we also provide some scores on that. And when you have the data and the analytics, you need solutions to run them. So we also provide those software solutions. Now we've gotten into open banking and also on ESG assessment. So this is CRIF globally. In India, we have 3 entities. As you said, CRIF Highmark has been on this show earlier, and that's one of the RBI registered credit bureau. We also have CRIF Solutions, where we provide the software solutions, the analytic solutions, company reports for business information, etc., the ESG assessment. Yeah. And now with the open banking coming into India, various solutions around usage of open banking. And the latest baby on the anvil is CRIF Connect, which is again an RBI licensed account aggregator.
Let's just get into it. Actually, before I get into account aggregator, I want to understand how life was before account aggregator, because I think that's pretty much today also, because account aggregator is still not as prevalent or as dominant or as, widespread as, say, something like a UPI. Okay. So I want to build this case for our listeners to understand that what is life without an account aggregator before we get into the concept.
So I'm sure most of your listeners would have taken some amount of financial services at some point in time, right? I have also been on the lending side earlier. So apart from everything that has become digital over a period of time in terms of your application, in terms of your assessment of getting any financial services, be it a loan, be it a card or something else, one part of that was when you have to share your information with the financial entity, whoever you are applying for the service from. Now, we have become paperless, we have become cashless, but one part is where the consent of the customer is helping you to actually share information with the entity. Before the account aggregator came in, one part that was required was, let's say, sharing your bank statement, which enables you to get those services to help you get assessed better. At that point in time, either you would go to your bank or you would take a printout from the bank, then you run around to get it stamped and everything. Later on, with the advent of net banking and everything, you can download the statement yourself, but ultimately you have to submit it as a physical copy, also get it stamped just to prove the authenticity and everything.
With the branch manager
With the branch.
and his number and his bank number or whatever,
Exactly.
something of that sort.
With the stamp and
With the
everything. Exactly.
I know what you're talking about.
So that adds to the hassle the customer has to go through, number one. Number two, for the financial service provider to whom I'm submitting that data, that adds to the hassle of checking the authenticity of the document. So when it adds to the hassle, it adds to efficiency, it adds to the cost. So a lot of things used to happen earlier. That is the life before Account Aggregator.
Nice. And when you say financial products, now here, from what I heard from you, it looks like you're referring mainly to the lending side. I think the investment size, thankfully, has become a little bit better. Like if you want to open a brokerage account, I remember 10, 15 years ago, it used to be a 60-page form or 50-page form with 50 signatures.
Yeah.
Okay. So lending, of course, was even more complicated because, like you said, you have to take your account statements, you have to take bank manager's signature, PAN cards, etc. So if I've understood this correctly, you've got different types of information sitting in different places, which I, as a buyer of financial products, have to aggregate to go to the next guy.
Correct. Add from your bank statement, add your income statements, add your salary
slips. Oh, yeah.
That could be for your booking also,
brokerage,
as well as for lending also, right? As soon as you add these things, as you rightly put it, there are in various silos which you have to aggregate and then submit physical copies.
Yeah, like the DMAT or something of that sort. Okay, now let's start with the account aggregator concept. I know that the government introduced this in 2016. When we say the government, who are we talking about? Are we talking about the Ministry of Finance, SEBI, RBI? Who exactly? What was their thinking and what did they do in 2016?
So it actually started off, yes, by the Ministry of Finance, and the thought itself was to get open banking into India. Now, Europe, this was already happening. But when India thinks about it and when RBI thinks about it, it's always a step ahead. Yeah. So the good part is that India started off not only as an open banking ecosystem, but an open finance ecosystem. So in 2016, the entire framework was formed on firstly what the wheres and whats of the account aggregator ecosystem, who can be participating, what will an account aggregator do or not do. And with those frameworks came in the entire process of licensing and who can apply and what do you need to do for it. So that started off in 2016. And I think, if I'm not wrong, around 2019 was when the first account aggregator license was given to the entity.
Right. I want two offshoots from here. One is, what is open banking? Okay, as a concept, because you said that Europe already had it and RBI kind of, which, like you correctly said, we are ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. So what was open banking? What is open banking? And
So open banking would basically mean you are able to share your banking transactions from where you hold the bank account to any other entity from whom you're looking for a service which needs your bank transactions.
Oh, okay.
So it's only about bank transactions being shared. But in India, as I said, that it's more moved from open banking to open finance. So people who are now able to share data is not only banking transaction. GST is there. Your PFRD is there. There are a lot of things on insurance. There is also on income and everything that can be shared on the same platform with your consent. So you've already moved as an open finance ecosystem. And as we speak, a lot of other than bank transactions, a lot of other players are already live on the account aggregator ecosystem.
Yeah. Now I want to get into the account aggregator because you said that the first license was given in 2019. Right. Now, when I just hear about this, I think somewhere in my head, when I was reading up on this, I just kind of naturally assumed that an account aggregator would be an existing organization like a bank or maybe, because what I could think of was DMAT. Now, DMAT is an aggregation of all the share transactions that I do. I buy this share, buy that share, and that gets aggregated, put into a DMAT. DMAT is linked to a bank. Boom. I'm kind of done. But from what you told me, an account aggregator is a third party. It's another entity that needs a license which is given by whoever. I don't know, RBI, SEBI. So can you just explain to us at an entity level what exactly is an account aggregator and possibly, tomorrow if I wake up one fine day and say that I want to become an account aggregator, what's in it for me?
So before I answer that, I think it's important to understand what the ecosystem means, right? Then only would it would be good to talk about what an account aggregator does. Yeah. So there are four major players in an account aggregator ecosystem. The one in the center is the end consumer, individuals like you and me. Now, we would be the ones who need a financial service and want to share our financial data, right, on both the sides. For that, I have let's say my financial data lying with a particular bank. That's called an FIP, a financial information provider.
Okay.
And wherever I am taking the service from, it's a financial information user, FIU.
Oh, okay.
So you have the customer, you have an FIU or an FIP. So these three entities, and the fourth entity in the center is an account aggregator.
Right.
So the account aggregator's job is to seek the consent from the consumer in the correct way, in the correct form, send that consent to the data provider, asking for the data based on the consent with all the details of the purpose and everything else for the period, and provide that data to the information user, the FIU. So this is the ecosystem. Now, yes, there are certain guidelines for an account aggregator, to form an account aggregator. Obviously, the company has to be registered in India. There is a capital requirement, which is there around 2 crores or so. But there are a lot of guidelines right from day one from the Reserve Bank of India on what are the things that you need to do when you build up your entire tech stack, right? And those things are something which you need to meet before you get a registry as an account aggregator. So what happens is when you apply, you first get assessed by the Reserve Bank and you get an in-principle license. After you get an in-principle license, you get 12 months period to take up the entire tech stack and meet all the norms which are there, and then apply for the operating license or the certificate of registration.
Right.
After that, you become an operating account aggregator. So that is the way.
Very interesting. So a credit bureau to seem like an ideal candidate because they're already doing half the work, right?
Yeah.
So is my thinking correct here?
So credit bureau is not either an FIP or an FIU as per the regulations right now.
Okay.
Point number one. Account aggregator does not see the data, does not store the data.
It doesn't store the data.
Does not store
Very
the data.
interesting.
So that's what I said, that the reason why you have four people in this ecosystem is that as a customer, today, if I'm sharing physical copies with a player, or maybe I'm putting my internet banking password somewhere on some third-party player, there's a lot of risk concern there.
Yeah.
Here you have a regulated entity with all the norms of security and everything, who takes your consent, but the data goes from the information provider to the information user.
Yeah.
In an encrypted form. It passes through the account aggregator, but the account aggregator does not see, does not store, does not analyze. So that is the way account aggregators work. That the major job of the account aggregator is to manage the consent of the customer, right? So consent, there are 2-3 things. Today, we may end up doing a tick mark on terms and conditions, and that's a consent.
Always,
right?
yeah.
But with these guidelines, there is a provision for a customer to revoke his consent. And those things have to be provided by the account aggregator. So a customer at any point in time can revoke his consent, can give a consent for a specific, should give a consent for a specific purpose, for a specific period and everything.
Okay. It has been 7 years since this, since the concept was introduced. Can you just tell us what's been the progress so far?
Yeah. So as I said, the first account aggregator got licensed in 2019. But as of now, if you see, there would be close to around 27 or 26 million accounts that have been linked.
When you say accounts, it's across all
bank
products.
Bank accounts.
Bank accounts. Okay, yeah.
Right. Around 28 million consents that have been taken. We are still in a nascent stage, right? From an account aggregator perspective, there are 14 account aggregators who are licensed as of now, and I think there are 3-4 more in principle license stage. There could be more who have applied that we may not be aware of right now. But the progress is a lot of the major banks, almost all the major banks, etc., they are live on the account aggregator ecosystem. GST is live, some of the insurance companies are live. So that progress is going on a daily basis. The important thing to note is when the first license, let's say, came in 2019, you had the period of the pandemic also after that. But there was a certain amount of tech investments, changes, ways of working changes for adoption that had to happen in the ecosystem among the financial institutions also, right?
Yeah.
So first you have to have the providers ready. So till the time you don't have the banks linked, आप consent देके भी क्या करोगे? I mean, you really can't get the consent, but you don't have the data supplier from the back. So that activity had to happen. And that is why it is time taking. So if you just compare it to a credit bureau, till the time you have the data, right, you may not be getting that information out, which is more comprehensive, right?
Yeah.
So that is the part that has happened till now. Now, as I said, so many consents are already happening. People are coming online. The adoption levels are increasing. RBI is also trying to look at various ways and means to increase the adoption of the account aggregator. And a program like yours, gives that kind of information to the consumers so that they are also more open to do things like that, right? If I just compare it to UPI, right? When we had to, UPI payments were there earlier also, but not many people were doing it. And then you had something like a demonetization, and then people started getting comfortable with it, right? That's where I think the account aggregator will go. So as soon as people realize the ease of it, as soon as people realize that it is all regulated, secured and everything, people would be more and more adaptive to using it.
Thanks for the kind words for the podcast. So who can be an account aggregator today, and are there any requirements, like maybe your server has to be in India, you only have to be an Indian entity, or is it open to pretty much everyone? Or, for example, are there capital requirements or whatever?
Yeah, so there is a capital requirement of around 2 crores to start off with. The company has to be registered in India. Servers, data, etc. has to be in India. Having said that, while we don't store data at all, right? But the customer's consent and everything is getting stored. So all those things have to be in India. And the more important thing is all the other norms of the tech stack that have to be met. So even when you apply, you really have to talk about what would you do. And then once you get the in-principle license, you have to do it. And then that gets checked, whether those things are in place or not, based on the current requirements which are there.
Yeah, and this sounds like a banking product, or rather it seems to be something that's linked to the banking system. So I'm assuming that the regulator over the account aggregator is RBI.
The regulator is Reserve Bank of India, but I think this is one of the few, I would say, ecosystems where you have different regulators working together.
I'm assuming you need to have SEBI.
SEBI is there, IRDA is there,
there,
insurance is there, broking firms are there. They are also FIPs and FIUs.
Yeah.
But yes, the regulator itself is RBI.
Okay, Wilfred, how does the account aggregator ecosystem change life for everyone? And let's look at the people in the ecosystem that you mentioned, leaving aside the account aggregator, because it's a brand new business for him. So I think let's start with the consumer, then go to the financial information provider, financial information user. Let's do that. Yeah.
So from a consumer standpoint, I think we touched upon it when we started our conversation. Firstly, it gives you, from taking a financial service product, right? It gives you an ease of providing and sharing your information with whoever you are trying to take that service from. Brings in more efficiency, does not let you run around a bit, makes it more digital, makes it secured, and you have a right on what the data will be used for and how much or for what duration that data can be used. And you can revoke your consent at any point in time. As soon as you revoke your consent, your data stops getting shared, with a particular player. Secondly, with this, a lot of other use cases, build up for a consumer. So today, if bank today gives me a product, which could be a loan, could be, anything else in terms of investments or whatever. But apart from that, the fact that my data is aggregated, it also helps me see my entire cash flow together, right? It could be through a product that I get from a bank, or it could be something through my phone or through my app or through the account aggregator that these things can happen. So ease of functioning for the consumer, reducing the cost firstly for the consumer, and also not running around in terms of sharing data. Now for a FIU, obviously it gets the data more digitally, gets more authentic data directly from source. So the additional cost of verifying that information, checking those information, those costs are saved. Because it is digital, then your manpower cost gets saved in terms of collecting that information. Otherwise, people may have to send someone to get the bank statement or to get some other statements, etc. Thirdly, because it is digital, it helps you analyze the data better and make good insights about from the data itself. And then last but not the least, if I talk about an FIU, when the data is coming in directly from source, it is also coming in with the details of the customer. So a lot of KYC checks also, a double check of a KYC can happen over there. Now coming to the FIP, who's the data provider, right? Yeah. Now from an FIP perspective today, the same thing if would be happening without an account aggregator. My person in the branch, if I'm a bank, will have to spend time for the stamping, for the signing, or for giving a printout and all those kind of things that I'll need to do. And as a consumer, I have to give you your statement if you come and ask for it. Yeah. Here, there's a digital mean of doing it, so my manpower is used in some better work rather than doing this. So these are the few things. And net, it's about reciprocity, right? So if you are providing the data, you are also getting to use. So as an FIP, I also have the benefits of an FIU in both cases. So for example, the banks are sharing data, the NBFCs who are deposit taking NBFCs will also be sharing the data. So you have all the players in the ecosystem, insurance, broking firms, etc., who will benefit from things, both as FIPs as well as FIUs.
Yeah. Can we build a scenario out here, maybe with specific financial products to help our listeners understand what are the benefits to me of an account aggregator? I'm assuming that, I don't think there'll be an account aggregator app as such. It'll be the technology, which is an overlay for someone who starts a product. I download the app and life becomes easier for me.
Exactly.
So loan is an obvious one. It just help us understand the various products that could really benefit to me as a user when this comes in.
Sure. So let me take an example of a personal finance management tool, a PFM tool as people call it, right? Now let's say I work with a bank or with any NBFC, broking firms, whatever. And along with that, in their app or in their net banking or in whichever way, they also provide me a personal finance management tool. Now in that personal finance management tool, I am able to link all my bank accounts. If I link all my bank accounts, those kind of tools also helps me see my aggregated cash flow.
Correct.
If I see my aggregated cash flow, you can also generate a lot of insights around it. So firstly, when you see your aggregated cash flow, you will also see your spending patterns because there will be categorization of the transaction that you've done. So how much are you spending on entertainment? How much are you spending on travel? How much are you spending on car maintenance or medical supplies, etc.? You can set your own budgets. So customer can keep a budget around the kind of spends that they will want to spend into. Secondly, it also helps me make some goals. That okay, I want to travel abroad after 3 months. And what is the kind of money that I may need? Then my cash flow will tell me whether I will have that money at that point in time or not.
Right.
Now, this is a normal tool. If I build on top of this, the bank can help me by providing insights on the tool itself. So, for example, if today, for any chance, I have a payment that has to go through, either it's an EMI or a credit card payment or whatever kind of payment from a particular account, and the balance is going to be low on that day. So it's predicting that the balance may be low on that day. Why don't you transfer money from this account to the other account? So it helps me be more diligent about my financial well-being. Also, it will help me that, for example, if I'm having a lot of car maintenance, expenses, it can tell me that maybe it's time for me to take a new car, and here's a pre-approved car loan for you.
Okay.
Right.
Very
so,
interesting.
So we talk about personalized offers.
Yeah.
I'm talking about more of a hyper-personalized offer,
Right.
which is enabled due to the account aggregator ecosystem. And right now, I'm talking only about banks. Add your insurance, your investment portfolios, and everything else. As a consumer, you have the power in your hand to see everything together.
Right.
Otherwise, multiple passwords, multiple things that you need to remember, it becomes a pain.
Yeah, I mean, straight off the hat, I can just think of, most of us have 3 bank accounts, 3 credit cards, 2 brokerage accounts. So that's 3 plus 3 plus 2, that's 8.
Yeah.
Just add in 2 policies, there 10. So at the bare minimum, we would have 10 financial products.
Correct.
Spread across 4 different financial entities. There'll be a bank, there'll be a broker, there'll be an insurance provider, there'll be a credit card company, and information coming in from all of them. So potentially anyone who builds an aggregation tool, an aggregation app, like you said, let's call it the personal financial management tool. they need to probably tie up with the account aggregator. I need to give my consent.
Exactly.
And boom, after that, this thing can go wherever I as a user wanted to go, if I've understood this correct.
Exactly. You understood it correct.
Okay. What about issues like consent, privacy, safety? Because, I spoke about the benefits of all this. I'm just putting my entire financial life out there. Yeah. Putting our lives out there, so of course, thanks to social media, to wo to ho hi gaya hai. Okay. But that's a different discussion. Any risks you see out here? What are the safeguards being built in out here before we take such a big step?
So this is where I come from, that people would always think that I am sharing a lot of data and how secure are things. But before I talk about how secure things are, it is important to emphasize and re-emphasize, you are not sharing data with the account aggregator. You are giving a consent to the account aggregator to take your data from bank A or insurance A and share it where you have applied for some financial product. So that there's no sharing of data happening with the account aggregator.
Right.
It's only your consent and maybe your details which are there.
And you said pass through. That's all he's doing.
It's just a pass through. And as per regulation, the account aggregator is not allowed to store, analyze or do anything of this data.
Right.
The example that I gave about the PFM app is not something which the account aggregator is providing. Right? It could be the bank providing it. It could be any other player whom you have a relationship with. They could be providing. But having said that, yes, during the licensing process, there is a clear guideline of the Reserve Bank of India in terms of the security features that the tech stack of an account aggregator should have. And these are the latest requirements which are there, be it any kind of security standards that you have to meet. And obviously, being a regulated entity, you have to go through various time and time again. You have to go through various checks and balances with the Reserve Bank or with any other regulator. Lastly, today, the same consumer may be sharing the same data either physically or putting in the net banking password and everything on a third party app. Here, you are giving a consent that to a regulated entity. So there is norms and comfort that any individual should have of where the data is being shared to an account aggregator.
Yeah. So it's sounding a lot to me like an Aadhaar authentication. This consent that we're giving, I'm sure that when this becomes more prevalent, the consent that I'll be giving would probably be through some OTP authentication method or something.
Correct.
Where I will be able to clearly see that I'm giving this to so and so. I'm assuming, because I just get worried with all this. I was just reading today's papers about how senior citizens were conned by someone somewhere saying that I'm from the Employee Provident Fund organization. You're a retired person, and this guy calling in told the senior citizen couple, and there are two of them, that I know that you work for so and so place, and these are your dues. Send me so and so money, and that's it. And come on, which 60, 65, 70-year-old would not want to have? They would probably think that I retired, 10 years ago. And it's a very common thing that can happen. I'm just trying to think that, how can we make this more safe? You have any thoughts on this?
So, see, there are 2-3 things. Even you mentioned about Aadhaar authentication. So when you're giving a consent for Aadhaar authentication, your details are getting checked with the UIDAI, right? Similarly, in the case of account aggregator, you are giving a consent from point A, which is your own bank or your own insurance company or your own, investment firm, to share data with. Literally speaking, the data is being shared directly. I mean, it is passing through the account aggregator, but it is shared directly. Now, today you use, your apps for payments. Do you feel the need of you're sharing data with the other players or whoever there is? But there are people who are using it, right? There are norms and those things, because the platform is the UPI platform, right? Which obviously NPCI has. But because of the platform, there is some amount of legitimacy, some amount of comfort that you get. And the fact that you can make only transactions up to a particular limit in a particular day. You can set your limits, etc. Similarly, in the account aggregator, your consent is going to a regulated entity. And all the entities in the ecosystem are regulated entities. So today, if I have a private company, I cannot access the account aggregator ecosystem. It is only the regulated entities like banks, NBFCs, insurance companies, etc., who can access and who can participate in both cases. Thirdly, if I take the same example of the UPI payments, today, even in UPI, right, you may link multiple bank accounts, but you make a payment with one bank account.
Yeah,
You choose.
correct, yeah.
Similarly, in account aggregator, you may link multiple bank accounts. Today, I'm applying for a loan. I will share this bank account details. Tomorrow, I'm applying for something else to open an account. I may share some other bank account details, right? So that is in your hands. As a manager of the consent, that is in your hands, and the account aggregator is enabling you to do that. And last but not the least, at any point in time, you can revoke the consent, and very easily on the interface of the account aggregator. Whether it is a mobile app interface or is a web app interface,
Website, yeah.
you can revoke the consent. And you can be sure that after your consent is revoked, the data will not get shared even if asked.
Yeah.
Which is why the third entity is there in between FIP and FIU. So if the FIU even asks for your data to the FIP, the account aggregator will not let it go through because the consent is revoked.
Yeah.
And that is managed not by FIU, not by FIP, but by the neutral third party, which is account
Aggregator, yeah. Will this increase my spam phone calls more than what they already are?
Shouldn't.
Well, yeah, but honestly, folks, just be careful. I think the gates that have been... Account aggregator ultimately is a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
He's just, opening the gate, closing the gate, giving, traffic is going from here to there. I think the responsibility is always on us. And I don't think, and I think that the RBI does a fantastic job when it comes to vigilance. And everywhere you see there are ads running about don't do this, don't do that, don't share OTPs, etc. So, whenever this comes out, and I believe that there are some apps which are already tying up and doing this. If you're doing this, please know what you're doing before sharing any information. Okay.
Yeah. I would just add one more thing.
Please.
One more important thing, which again, learned over the experience, because I'm also a consumer like you. So you said the number of spam calls that we get.
Of course.
Ask the second and the third question. You will know whether it is a spam call or not.
Okay.
The person who's calling you may know, one or two things about you, may not know the fourth and the fifth thing about you. And it has always worked for me. So just ask one or two more questions and just use a little bit of brains. I mean, people may call about something which has happened years ago, but they're calling on your most recent phone number.
Yeah.
So it has happened
Very
with
interesting.
me. That when I was in multiple other cities. And,
Okay.
at that point in time, my mobile number was very, very different.
Right.
They're calling me on my latest mobile number and talking about something which happened, 15, 20 years back. And with that, you ask the second question, okay, which one are you talking about? What are you talking about? Okay, this. Then you know that, okay, that is 20 years back and you're calling on my latest number. So something is fishy.
So, folks, if you get a genuine-ish sounding spam or fraud call, what Wilfred says is, if they know a lot of information about you, ask the second or third question, maybe something that happened long ago.
Yeah.
Okay. If they slip on that, just keep the phone down and block the number. So good tip, very, very good tip, Wilfred. Okay. Last question. What are the limitations of account aggregator? What can it not do?
So as I said, account aggregator, one of the parts of the regulation is that any company which is into the account aggregator business can only do the account aggregator business, right? And that is why you have, CRIF Connect as a separate entity, which can only do an account aggregator business. What it cannot do, I think we discussed this, cannot store data. It cannot see data. It cannot store data. It cannot analyze data. And obviously, when you are not doing all of this, you cannot offer recommendations of insights based on that data, right? So this is it. Purely consent management and purely for the consumer about consent, about, having the uptime for data transfers coming from the FIP to the FIU and vice versa. That is what an account aggregator can do. Nothing else.
Yeah. So there are 14.
There are 14.
Yeah, and that includes CRIF Connect also.
That includes CRIF Connect.
So then who would your clients be? I mean, what does your business model look like?
So right now the clients obviously are two types. First, as I said, the data providers. So you have to have the linkage with the data providers. However, on the other side, the data users. So like you charge your data users on a transaction basis, similarly the account aggregators would do that. But there are 14 right now. And as I said, the input, the output, everything is a standardized format prescribed by the Reserve Bank of India in the guidelines.
Okay.
So the API are also governed through a standardized format for all the account users, all the account aggregators and everyone.
Okay. And as a user, I'm guessing that I would not be interacting with you, but you would be the person behind who's opening the gate or letting that information pass through. So I would be probably using, let's just assume that I want to take a loan and I download an app that helps me choose between various loan providers that are out there. I would be giving my consent, for you to provide the loan app or whatever, the loan lending company details of my banking. Is that how it works?
I would answer it in two parts. First part is how will it work and why what you said may not work.
Yeah.
So let's take some examples over here. Let's say there is an NBFC to whom I've applied for a loan. All right. And let's say my process is right now, everyone is digital now mostly. Yeah. So my process is digital. I fill up the form, or maybe even I don't need to fill up my form. I put in my phone number, my name, I get an OTP, I'm authenticated, I put in my PAN number, that is getting checked and everything is fine. At that point in time, maybe even a credit bureau is getting pulled, right? Now, when the time comes for my bank statement submission, there would be thing that either I have an account aggregator handle, or if I don't have an account aggregator handle, then the account aggregator journey starts. Now, that particular NBFC may be, let's say, working with CRIF Connect. So, the CRIF Connect journey will start where you would authenticate yourself through your phone number and everything. Your existing bank accounts may get searched. You will link, again, up to you which ones you want to link. You will link those bank accounts. You will give a specific consent for specific bank account or for all bank accounts, and then go back to that NBFC journey of completing the application.
Okay.
Then the data automatically gets shared. So that would be a thing. You, in this case, may not have come to CRIF Connect, but you have gone to that NBFC.
Correct, yeah.
Any NBFC or a bank or whoever it is. Now, if I come back to the point that you mentioned, if you download a loan app, right? It depends on what app you're downloading. If you're downloading an app of a registered lender, a bank or an NBFC, the same thing happens.
Correct, yeah.
But if it is just a fintech player who is
a platform,
they are not allowed to access the account aggregator.
Yeah. Okay.
So the account aggregator journey does not start there.
Got it, yeah.
Now, in the earlier example that I gave, where if you have an existing handle, you will put the handle. How will you have an existing handle? That is the time where you can interact with any account aggregator directly. So today, on the various payments app, and if I can name a few like Google Pay, Phone Pay, etc., you have created your ID. Today, you may be paying through Phone Pay, but you also have Google Pay or vice versa. Similarly, you can come to the account aggregator, either on the web or on the app itself. They will have their own apps. You can download the app. You can link your bank accounts and keep it there. Right. So as soon as you register yourself, you will also get a handle, like you have a handle for a GP or a Phone Pay, right? Maybe your name or your number @ whatever.
XYZ, yeah.
So that is the way you will have the handle for an account aggregator. So if you already have a handle, you put the handle, your entire inquiry will be routed through that account aggregator. If you don't have any, you create.
Yeah. So when you take a loan, they'll ask you for your account aggregator handle.
Yeah. And if you don't have it, then you can create in the same journey. So it becomes very easy.
And there are, if I open 5 different account aggregator, will I get 5 different handles? Like in case of UPI,
exactly.
I have lost count of how many handles I've got.
Exactly.
I kind of assumed that it's like an email thing. Once it's there, it's there. But no, there's a handle for X, Y. So it's the same thing in account aggregator also.
Exactly.
Very interesting, folks. So I would say go out and explore on your own, but be careful. Okay. Wilfred, our final standard question, we are done with the technical part of the show. Now this is the last question that we ask all our guests. Anything that you're reading, any book recommendation that you have for our listeners?
So Anupam, this is one question I get asked, and I always say I am not a book reader, right? I am more of a audio visual kind of a person.
Even better.
You may ask me about what I'm watching.
What are you watching? Yeah, there you go. How about that?
But before that, I would tell you a book which I read very, very recently. And that is not I should not call it a book. I have a 4-year-old daughter. So I was reading to her. In fact, I was reading to her yesterday, and a few things which caught my attention about the book. It's a children kind of a story. I think it talks. The name is Monkey Puzzles.
Okay.
And it talks about a monkey, a baby monkey who has lost the count of where the mother is, and is asking a butterfly of where my mom would be. So the butterfly asks, okay, what does she look like? How do I recognize? And he keeps saying something. So for example, like he keeps saying that, okay, she is always hanging on the tree and all. Oh, tree, I know where to find her. And goes and shows a snake coiled on the branch.
Okay.
So you said tree, no? Hanging on the tree. So this is it. So then they said, oh, but this is not, she usually takes me to drink water in the lake. So a lake, you said, okay, you go there and the elephant. So this is your mother.
Okay.
So while I was reading to her, at the end, by the way, he finds the mother.
Thank you. Yeah.
But while I was reading it to her, and I was just trying to relate it to what we keep doing, in terms of what you are communicating and what the person in front is understanding.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the story, how they were able to find the mother is when the baby monkey says, by the way, she looks like me. And the butterfly says, my kids don't look like me, so I don't know. So you should have told me that earlier.
Okay.
So that is one.
How about that?
Coming back to what I'm watching.
You're watching,
I just watched a movie, The Burial.
Of course. J.B. Fox and
Yes.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Yes.
Wonderful movie.
So,
Courtroom drama after a very long
drama.
time. Yeah.
And I was thinking about the earlier courtroom drama, which was on the O.J. Simpson case. And in both the things, it is about storytelling of how you convince the jury.
Yeah.
So the storytelling part, which I keep, telling my team about when you are presenting a product to the client or when you're presenting to your team, the storytelling is very, very important.
Always. Yeah,
so it's not only about what you have put on a slide or what is the thing that you're talking about. The story has to come through.
Yeah. So, The Burial is on Amazon Prime. Like Wilfred said, it stars J.B. Fox and Tommy Lee Jones. And the series that Wilfred referred to, I'm assuming, is American Crime. I think it was season 1 or season 2, which had the O.J. Simpson stories. I think it's an 8-episoder.
Yes.
I don't know if it's still there on Netflix. But
I don't know if it is still there.
Outstanding. It was like really, really good. And that is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Wilfred Sigler, Managing Director, VAS, India and South Asia Markets, CRIF Solutions. Wilfred, thank you so much for doing this episode for our listeners.
IVM.